And welcome back to Astro Self Care Sunday. I am Kenya. It's good to be back in the space with you. I'm excited because today we are talking about Libra. And so I have a ton of placements in Libra. Now, it is not my sun, moon, or rising, but I still have a lot of placements. So before we dig in, I just want to welcome everyone. If you are new to my channel, yay! Welcome, welcome, welcome. Have you subscribed? Have you subscribed? Have you subscribed? Have you subscribed? Make sure you subscribe. And if this video resonates for you, if it's something that you were like, make sure you like it and make sure you share. If you are already a subscriber, welcome back. If you have been here before but have never subscribed, what are you waiting for? And again, my name is Kenya. Now, I don't usually say all that I do, but I'm going to say just really quickly as a reminder. I do astrology guidance readings and I focus on the birth chart or the natal chart. So that is the exact position that all the planets, all the constellations were in, right the day, moment, minute, second that you were born. That to me, in my opinion, is so pivotal and critical because no matter what is happening in the planets in live time, it is very how it will impact you, how you will feel it, how you will experience the energy is very dependent on what your birth chart says. So if you want to learn more about astrology, if you want to have a bit of a Q&A, if you want to just kind of tap in a little bit more, make sure that you go to findingyourvoiceafter40.com. You'll see where it says book free discovery call. Book that and look into the description. There's all kinds of links, and you can do a free discovery call just to kind of better understand. If you are all about astrology, you want to learn more about your birth chart, I encourage you to book a reading, which is a guidance reading. So what makes a guidance reading different than a typical reading? My background is academically, professionally, what have you. I have my master's in counseling. And so I'm also a certified holistic wellness coach. So I do pretty much nothing when I work with people without providing some level of mentoring and guidance. And so with the astrology, I use it as a foundation, as a way for you to begin to remember who you are, to affirm who you are, to consider maybe where certain challenges, certain um, barriers, certain gifts all come from. And so what happens is the first half of the session, I just ask some questions and we do more or less an exploratory space, a personal inquiry, an opportunity for you to kind of just tell a little bit more of your story because astrology, I'm not doing astrology to guess anything about you. You are your story, right? So by hearing your story, what I do the second half is then we pull the chart and everything that you talk about, we'll be able to see it in the chart and I'll be able to explain a little bit more why maybe certain challenges or questions you may have kind of exist as it relates to this cosmic energy and as it relates to kind of soul purpose. Okay. So that's what I do. If you would love to have a reading, I have limited hours that I do reading. So you want to get on the books because I'm also an assistant professor at a university, and I also do other coaching programs and a myriad of things. So get on there so that you can learn more, remember more about yourself, and be more confirmed. All right, so let's get into Virgo. If you're new here, the way that we do this on our Self Care Sundays is I basically tell some of the more important traits of that zodiac sign. And if it's your sun sign, your moon sign, or your rising, then that zodiac sign is a pretty dominant feature of who you are. Okay, in terms of astrology, at least astrologically. And so even if Libra is not, though, one of those three, because we have every sign in us, I say that every week, every sign in us, even though it's not one of your top three, if you're like me, where Libra, while it's not in my top three, it is very prominent in my chart. pretty much all the other planets are in Libra for me. So there's a lot about Libra that I connect to. It sits for me in my fourth house, which is the fourth house is associated with Cancerian energy. So it's home, it's family life, it's food, it's ancestry. So it's the fourth house is one of the most important houses in your chart because it is how you were brought into the world, right? It's your family, it's how you were conditioned or brought up, or it's the initial environment. So it's a pretty significant part of our chart. So that's what we do. Then after I kind of say the traits, I talk about the high frequency of that sign, meaning what's the beauty, the productive energy, why we each can, or how we each can use that energy to propel us, to push us to evolve, the wonderful qualities of that energy. And then I talk about the low frequency. And that's the energy of the sign that can cause challenge, can cause barriers, can cause you not to be able to be your most expansive self. In fact, it's a bit of a contrast, as not to make you bad or anything like that, but it is for that contrast is what's necessary for our development, right? So, stress, not all stress is bad. There needs to be a little bit of a rub for us to evolve, get our lessons, and move on. So, I talk about the low frequency, and then I give you actual self care tips that you can use. Now, you may find if you've been following this series, you may say, well, didn't you say that same self care activity for the other sign? Probably, but the reason for that particular self care activity for that sign, that's what changes, okay? Because you want to be paying attention to what's the rationale? Why will this self-care activity be so much more powerful for the Cancer versus the Leo versus the Libra, right? So that's what we want to kind of pay attention to. And I try to point out why that particular self care is so helpful for the zodiac sign we're talking about. And then I usually do a question of the day. Right now, we're focusing on retrogrades as our question. So stay to the end for that. I try to keep these 30 minutes or less. So let's get into it, okay? And I do read notes. Yes, I always remind y'all I read notes so that I can make sure I stay on track. So, Libra, the mantra for Libra is I balance. I balance. Okay, so that's a very powerful mantra that automatically tells you a lot about the energy that Libra wants to give us: balance, harmony, equilibrium. Okay, very important to remember that because there's everything I'm talking about in terms of traits, high frequency, low frequency, is centered somewhere around this idea of balance. Okay. Libra is an energy of relationships and its connection to beauty. And so, what do we need in those things? A sense of balance. Okay. So, the dates for Libra is September 23rd through October 22nd. The symbol is the scales, balance, equilibrium. Element is air. Okay, so it's this expansive energy, right? And so, air, if you can remember, is a masculine quality. Masculine does not mean male, masculine just means active, more an external activity as opposed to a receiving energy. And its modality is cardinal, which means it kicks off, Libra kicks off our fall season. Okay, so cardinal always means what's initiating, it initiates action. It's ruled by Venus, a lovely planet of Venus, one of our, we have two planets that are just yummy, lovely when balanced, and that's Venus and Jupiter. But Jupiter can be kind of aggressive sometimes in certain spaces, but they're both trying to afford us this very positive energy and very gifting energy. It rules the seventh house. Okay, so the seventh house in the birth chart is the house of committed relationships. Libra, ruled by Venus, relationships, contracts that we make with each other. And these are our committed relationships, like our marriages, our business partners. And it is opposite of Aries. So Aries, we mentioned earlier, that was our first sign, is the I am. Libra is the we. Okay, because again, it's interested in that balance. All right. So the High frequency, those things that are just amazingly lovely, and this is just some, okay? Every time I do these, this is not all, it's just some, okay? There is a need for Libra energy to be seen in a very positive way by others. Now, that could be a high or not so high thing, depending on how much effort you put in that. Libra energy really, again, it's interested in harmony and relationships. So, in order for it to have that, it's interested in how are you taking me on? Like, how is this? Is this positive? Because if it's positive, we have a better chance of relating, right? We have a better chance of connecting. So it's very adaptable then, right? So, because if I'm now wanting to be seen in a positive way, I may adapt myself to accommodate that. So you can already tell where I'm going to go with Libra, right? When that whole adaptability versus accommodation versus codependency. You see where I'm going. Okay, so anyway, but so again, some more positive is aesthetics. Listen, Libra is all it is Venus, it's aesthetics, it's beauty, it's art, it's um, the finer, just the beautiful things that we like to connect to, the very artistic energy. Okay, so aesthetics is important. It also though has an analytical aspect of it because it's an air energy, and air, elements typically they're more in our head, and so they're whereas the water signs are more from our feelings and our heart space. So Libra can be a little bit more on the analytical side. Um, Very appealing, artsy, attractive, balanced beauty, calm, charming, considerate, again, because we're wanting this sense of balance and harmony, cooperative, and diplomatic, easygoing. You'll find that Libras, a lot of people say, gosh, Libras are so social or always have so many friends, always have the ability to meet people and just connect easily. That is Libra. That is what that is for, and all of us have Libra in us. So this is why it's important, if you've been paying attention to this series, you liking what you're hearing, and you've never met with me before, and never had an opportunity to really look at your individual birth chart in a way, the way that I'm explaining it in terms of self-care and so forth, I encourage you to consider doing this, because it'll all start really making sense when you start finding out, where does Libra sit in your life? Where do you tend to do these high frequency things that I'm talking about, right? Fair, it's going to be fair, right? Because it wants justice. It wants, again, that equilibrium. Graceful, harmonious, idealistic, and image conscious. So as you can see, all of those high frequency things are beautiful when they're productive. But you know where I'm going with this, right? You know where I'm going with this. When we get to the low frequency, this is the tough. And I can really relate because my Pluto, my Venus, my Mars, my Uranus are all in Libra. All of them in Libra. So I can really connect to this. So that low frequency. So those things when we talk about balance and adaptability, well, now you got to be careful, because now relationships can rule you, because you are so wired to connect and to be seen in a positive way. You can lead very heavily from the relationship space, which can then rule you, take over. That's a low frequency. There may be a sense of aloofness with Libra. And this aloofness is not because, oh, well, they just don't care. A lot of it, again, the aloofness is, I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to cause chaos, disharmony, unbalance. So if the more neutral or aloof that, and this is a low frequency, this is how it operates when it's doing that. The more I'm in that aloof state, the less chance of conflict and disharmony, which for Libra energy is very unsettling, and it sets them off. So it to not go against the grain, it can come off as an aloof energy when it's in a lower frequency, and complacent energy, compromising, too compromising. You have to be careful in becoming really dependent on feedback from others, as a result. Especially, I always say, when Libra is your moon, because again, a Libra moon is our emotions and our body and how we want our needs met. So if I have this need to be seen in a positive way, okay, that's an emotional wiring need I have. Then now, if I'm not careful of creating more balance in my Aries, which is more I am, and I'm independent, and these other fire kind of areas of us that give us a little bit more directness and not not this expansive air kind of quality, then you can depend. This is where the codependency comes on, and this is where this inability to make decisions. Libra low frequency can be very indecisive energy. And again, in an effort not to create the conflict, there might be this detached or disinterested, um, or easily swayed type of energy. So has to be very, Libra is, I think Libra energy sometimes can be um, really misunderstood. Sometimes people say, oh, Libras lie. And it's not so much lie as much as maybe omitting some things, but understand it's being done in order to not create conflict. But sometimes we have to have, right? We need a bit of the conflict so that we can get to new resolutions, new ideas, new discoveries, and growth. Okay. So you've got to remember that, Libras. Remember that, when you are falling in your Libra tendency of being indecisive or not wanting to rub against things or not saying anything or seeming like you're disinterested when in fact you are, really tap into where your Aries energy is, where your Sag energy is, where you're more direct, your Leo energy. I find that the fire allows you to get a bit more. The grounding, the Capricorn in you can be really helpful as well. Okay. And then the fixed air, the Aquarian energy can also help. All right. So self care. So I want to be able to read this to you as far as self care things to just be mindful for and things that you can do to keep the balance so you can feel balanced, right? So Libras are known for their love of balance, harmony, and social connection. When it comes to self care practices for Libra zodiac energy, it's important to focus on activities that promote peace, beauty, and interpersonal connections. Okay, so that social quality, that connection to the arts and beauty, and a sense of peace. Okay, now again, you might say, well, I don't have Libra and all that, and I want all of that. Yes, yes. But understand why the Libra needs that, because again of all of those high frequency things that I mentioned, in order to have the calm, in order to have the adaptability, to be seen positive, this is why those social interactions and that harmony is so important for Libras. So some things to do, well, socialize. Yes, this is why Libras, that's a very balancing and grounding thing. Not to say that Libras always are not. I don't want to get that confused with extroverted, because it's not necessarily that. It's just spending time with loved ones. It may just be one other loved one. It may just be two friends or what have you. But that social connection and interaction, whether it's more singular with a person versus a small group or what have you, is is very important, and having meaningful conversation and shared experiences is really good for self-care. Create aesthetic spaces, because again, that Venusian, that Venus ruler there is really you're ruled by that. You're very prone to connect when you can have a space that's very aesthetically pleasing for you. Again, particularly my Libra moons, because even more, remember, the Libra is an air, and air is usually typically a little bit more with our thinking space. But when Libra is in your moon, it's now connecting to the emotional space of you. So for those emotional needs to be met, it's important, to create these aesthetic spaces and indulge in art and culture. You obviously, one of the things that Libra energy can have a hard time with is creating boundaries. And boundaries, because, again, I'm air for one. Okay. So I'm air. And then when you are in Libra, and then also, again, this need to please, or this need to have positive feedback, I may blur some boundary lines a little bit, but it's really important that you're creating the boundaries so that you can have the balance. Okay. So the balance of work and play. Peaceful retreats, again, anything that's going to create some sense of calm is going to really add to that sense of wanting balance and harmony. All right. The ability to express yourself, that is tied into the social connectedness. That's also tied into air. Air, it's initiating kind of this energy of, air is communicating and creating relationships. And so, by expressing yourself, you may have better relatedness to someone. Okay. But also, expressing yourself allows you to create, right? And we're always creating. I don't mean just in art, and I don't mean just in dance. Anything that we're producing and we have, this inspiration, is a way to create and express ourselves. Practicing diplomacy, obviously, because again, wanting that harmony. So, nurturing your relationships by considering conflict resolution as opposed to I'm just going to disconnect. How can we mediate? How can we create this compromising situation, that can, by practicing that can actually be self-care for the Libra. Floral and natural elements, music therapy, for sure, for sure. You're combining the ability to connect to the feelings and the emotions, but also using art and sound as a way to get there. Very, very helpful. Yoga and meditation, again, just calming the mind, getting us to that calm. Doing relationship check ins. Okay. I find that Libras will feel safe and secure and balanced and grounded, when we can just kind of get a check in. That's also how we can get that positive feedback. How am I doing? How are we doing? How is all of this? And it's funny because as I'm speaking this out loud, I have so many Libra placements. This is such a big deal for me. I'm heavy on that. And sometimes my partner would be like, "Why are you checking in?" And I'm like, I'm just trying to make sure it's all harmonious. And then my Scorpio, who's very intuitive, it can be a lot. But I find that when I do these periodic check-ins, there is this sense of, oh, okay, I can feel more settled. And if there's an imbalance, I can know kind of how we may need to resolve that imbalance. And then setting your personal boundaries, fashion and style. And again, the fashion and style is going along with the beauty and the relatedness to that. And then, a gratitude practice, which again, anytime we're able to kind of focus more on the positive aspects, it can enhance this overall sense of well-being. And so, again, all of these can be for any sign, right? But I'm saying the ones that are particularly for this sign, and why. Okay, so that you're not just, oh, I better go just do that because everybody says you should meditate. No, why? What is the meditation doing for the Libra energy? Well, what it's doing, it's calming things, creating a better sense of balance. And that balance is something that is heavily wired in the Libra energy. So, tailoring that self care practice to align with that Libra energy, it really allows you to embrace your love for beauty, for the harmony, for the connection, and really allows you to get that sense of balance, okay, and well being in your life. All right. So, those are the things for our Libra. All right. All right. So, I really implore you, find out where Libra is in your chart, because whatever area it is, if it's in the first house, that means it's your rising most likely, or if you have some other planets, but that means you're very motivated. You identify heavily with that. Versus if it's in the seventh house, then that's your relationships. Okay. And seventh house, it rules seventh house. So that's a good place for your Libra to be placed. It's comfortable there. Okay. But we can talk about that if you want to book a session so that we can learn. All right. So, what is our question? We've been doing the retrogrades. What retrograde are we on? Well, we are on Mars. So, what does Mars retrograde mean? So, let's read this. First of all, we need to understand what Mars is. Mars is the energy, it rules Aries. Okay. Um, it also rules Scorpio. So, it's the power, it's the independence, it's how we assert ourselves, how we activate, how we get our confidence. Okay. So when we consider then what Mars retrograde means, because retrograde means we're reviewing and reflecting, right? When there is a Mars retrograde, which only happens about every 2 years or so. It's not a common, it's not like Mercury retrograde that bops around and happens a few times a year. The next one, according to what I did my research on, and I could be wrong, but the way that I was seeing it, the next one's not going to happen until December of 2024. Okay, because we sounds like happened every 2 years, and we just ended one at the end of last year. But Mars retrograde can cause a slowdown in energy and action to lead to a re-examination of goals, ambitions, and assertiveness. So instead of getting into our assertive and being the ambitious and doing, it's actually the retrograde is making us slow down to review that. Is how are we doing these? How are we asserting ourselves? How are our ambitions and our goals going? Is this an appropriate fit for me? So I believe that Mars was in retrograde at the top of this year, which caused kind of this like not really feeling like New Year's, like, let's go. It kind of felt like, I don't know. Because, energetically, I think a lot of people felt like, well, my New Year didn't really start till February, March. And that, if you look astrologically, what transits were happening explains a lot of that. So, again, that Mars retrograde is that we're not up for that for a minute, but understand what Mars energy is and what it rules. And it can help you better understand how that fits in your life. Okay. And then if we work together, I can show you even more how Mars is playing out. Mars is currently, at the time that I'm recording this, Mars is in Scorpio. And so it's in its place where it likes to be. So it can really be very, it can assist very heavily with those Scorpion traits like transformation and power, and having a sense of self-control. So there we are. That is it. If you enjoy this, make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe. If you're going to put a comment, I just ask, let's be thoughtful and constructive, right? Um, if you tell me astrology is horrible and it's bad and, this is not, I don't know why you're watching. I'm not quite sure why you're watching, right? If that's how you feel, and no disrespect, I think everybody's entitled for whatever they feel. But I think if you're going to engage on something that you actually can't connect to, why watch it, right? So hopefully you have something constructive. If you have a question, you can put it in the comments, or you can email info@findingyourvoiceafter40.com. We will be back next week to talk about my sun sign, the good old Scorpio. Ooh. Scorpio is the most intense of the zodiac signs. So I got a lot to say. I'm a sun sign Scorpio, and it's the most intense. So it's a lot. And hopefully we can keep it within our 30-minute frame. I will do that. But make sure you tune in next week. So that's why you got to subscribe so that when it comes out, you'll get notification. All right. You guys have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.